What is up, you guys? Welcome back to the podcast. My name is Ramon, and this is Dad's Podcast Project. One of the things that I wanted to talk about today is definitely the new format that we have going forward with the video portion of these podcasts. I'm definitely going to be incorporating more video with just myself in it. And I think that it's definitely a transition that is long in the making. I know that I was doing it for a while and then I sort of stopped. Not really sure why, but I did. And so it's something that I wanted to bring back. Another thing with that being said is I want to change the structure of the show a little bit. Not only just talk about what it is that I have going on in my life with my children, but just talk about some of the things that are just going on in the world. There have been a few previous podcast episodes where I was talking about the coronavirus, how it's affected my family, how it's affected just my day-to-day with work, how we've implemented certain things in our lives because of this. And I think that it's important to not only document what it is that I'm going through as a parent, what it is that I'm learning as a father each day with my children. Well, not necessarily each day. I'm not recording these each day, but when I do sit down to sort of collect my thoughts in this podcast format, I want to provide a little bit more than just the day-to-day. I would like it to also serve as, I guess, somewhat of a, maybe not necessarily like news, but kind of like a time capsule. And what I mean by that is, well, my wife and I, we were discussing last night how this event, this virus that is spreading and just affecting everyone, whether it's having the coronavirus yourself or having a loved one who has it, friend, family, or other, or just the effect that it's having on your life, not being able to go out and do the things that you've typically been able to do. For myself, going to the gym in the mornings was a part of my day-to-day routine for years, actually, and that stopped. Now, other people, it's going on a hike. The trails are now closed. It is being able to go to the grocery store and not feel self-conscious or have this feeling of anxiety when you're just trying to shop for groceries. These are the types of things that have changed our lives since. And not to put it in comparison, but in the context of the conversation between my wife and I, we were sort of referring to major events throughout our younger life. And for me, it was 9/11. When that occurred, I can remember where I was, I can remember what I was doing, and I can remember the overall tonal feel that it had on my day, the week, the months, the year. And it was just this instant, absolute change that had occurred. One night we went to bed. The next morning we get up for school, and the world is now different. And though the COVID-19 virus doesn't necessarily have that same effect in terms of lives lost in an instant, it has more of an effect on our lives to where I don't think I'll be able to remember where I was, what I was doing, who I was talking to the moment I heard of COVID-19 or the coronavirus. But I think that I'll be able to remember the overall tone and feel and the way life was, and quite possibly the way life will be henceforth. So certain things like that, I think bringing them into the fold with the podcast, and it's one of the things that I would like to start implementing. If this isn't going to be one of those standard news structured podcasts, this is sort of just, I guess, prefacing and just having the conversation of what it is that I've been thinking and what it is that I hope to implement in the future. The other thing is just talking about how well, I guess I'm getting sidetracked. If you've clicked on the YouTube video, you saw the thumbnail. This isn't like clickbait or anything, but I did want to talk about streaming services and like, what are you streaming? What are you watching? What is it that you're doing during this time where you're sheltered in place? Because here, at least on the thumbnail, Trolls World Tour, Parasite, Narcos Mexico season 2, I believe. And what else did I have up there? Tiger King. These are things that are on our playlist. These are things that we've been watching. The kids more so have had sort of free reign of the television. And when they're asleep, then my wife and I were able to watch what it is we want to watch. So in talking about Trolls, that movie that was released, it was supposed to come out in theaters. And due to the coronavirus and everybody sort of just businesses shutting down and things changing in the world, that no longer was on the table for at least this production company or whomever made the movie. So what they did was something that is very new and very different, at least in my vague research or hearsay. It is releasing the film for streaming on demand. And though on Apple Movie, it's not your typical $5.99 HD rental, it was more of like a premium movie ticket at $19.99 or $20 to see the film for 48 hours, I believe. You were able to rent it. Now, being at home with the kids, if I would have taken my son, that would have been a $40 trip. If my wife had come in tow, that would have been maybe almost 60. Getting popcorn, drinks, snacks, movie tickets. I mean, it's quite an expense. So here we were able to rent the movie. And now I'm not sure how this is going to translate in terms of overall revenue for this, like for whomever created the film. But I think that it's a very great test bed to implement something like this, because it's something that I've had conversations with friends about. As much of a movie goer and movie lover that I am, I had always wondered why it has to come out in theaters first. And it wasn't until the implementation of streaming services like Netflix that, well, now movies, they're coming out even sooner. And I might be getting ahead of myself here, but movies would typically roll out in the theater. You would go and see it or you wouldn't. And then you would have to wait like what felt like an eternity, which was probably more like, depending on the popularity of the film, determined when it was then released for video rental from, say, a Blockbuster or a Hollywood Video. And then it was also available for purchase. And I remember some very popular movies, they almost like immediately came out for purchase. And they always had those deals to get you in, like whether it was Best Buy this movie for $20 if you buy it today, and any other day you come in is $30. So certain things like that. And when Netflix came about, movie rentals and just wanting to stream content almost became king overnight. No longer were people going to Blockbuster or Hollywood Video to rent their movies. They were going through Netflix, and we all know what happened there. Blockbuster said goodbye, as did Hollywood Video, and this whole new format of consuming entertaining content was created. Now, on the topic of streaming services, things like Netflix, they invest very heavily in like Netflix original content. So I was almost curious, like, you only see A-list celebrities on the silver screen in the theater. But a few years ago, we started seeing A-listers sign on for exclusive movie roles through Netflix. And now I'm not sure if it was like there might have been some hurdles, or maybe there was a little bit less red tape with regards to the type of movies that they were able to make, or maybe the type of pay they were able to get. But it seemed as if it was much more enticing to get actors to sign on to do sort of on-demand or streamed movies, not released in theaters. And that could go down a whole nother rabbit hole conversation of whether or not these films should be eligible for like Academy Awards and stuff like that. I'm not in here to get into a debate about that, but what I am curious about is if this is another chain in the evolution of cinema. Are we now going to see movies that will have maybe a theater release and a streaming release on the same day? And that streaming release, maybe it's a much more premium ticket price, because at least for my wife and I, we would pay to see a movie at home because we have kids. And getting a date night, arranging a babysitter, I think that for movie houses out there, that's money on the table that they can tap into. They can tap into the people who are staying home. It's a real fine line, though, because now you have the convenience factor of not having to go to the theater. And I'm all about the experience, the big screen, dimming the lights, getting the sound, the whole ambiance, and just feel of going to the theater. However, as a parent, it's not easy. So I'm curious if they're going to see maybe expected ticket sales. Like, what were they forecasting if the movie were to have its regular release in theaters? And what did they get with this sort of premium digital streaming movie ticket? Did they get more money? Did they get less? I know that some kids, they want to see movies on repeat, where they're repeat rentals, because again, at $20, if you were going to see it once in the theater and you get it for 48 hours for $20, maybe you rent it twice and you've got it for now another 40. I don't want to do the math right now, but you get it for another 48 hours, if you know what I'm saying. So there's a possibility that people were renting it more than once. I'm not sure. But the other thing is the movie Parasite. I had been waiting for this one just because it had won, I believe it was the Academy Award for Best Director or Best Film. And some people were salty about the fact that Joker lost out. But this film, it was really good. I felt bad that I had watched sort of like ending explained, spoiler reviews, all of these going into it, because then nothing was a surprise to me. I pretty much knew the direction. I knew the sort of foreshadowing to look for. I knew what would it be called? I don't know, just the relation between certain scenes, certain characters, and what, like where we were going with this movie. And my wife, she really enjoyed it. And it was great because they released it early on Hulu, of all places. I mean, Hulu, that's a streaming service that we have. And if we were, like, not to bag on Hulu, but if we were to start getting rid of streaming services, I think that would be the first to go. The only reason that we have Hulu is for A Handmaid's Tale. And I mean, that's a stretch, because that's a really great show, but that's the only show. I don't think they have that much else in terms of things that are entertaining. But then again, I'm not on that app all the time. But yeah, another really great film. Another one that had come out was Tiger King, and I was late to the party with that one. That one was one that my coworkers were talking about, that I had seen memes about, and I was curious, like, what is this? What is all of this about? Until I had a free day and I sort of binged the first 2 episodes, and it was like, okay, this documentary is a ride. It is a wild ride in sort of like just human nature and just the craziness that is out there within our species. It was an interesting and very entertaining series to watch. I highly recommend it to those of you who haven't seen it, and I'm curious the direction that it's going to go. I'm not here to give any spoilers about it, though I'm sure everybody knows about Carol Baskins and just the memes and everything like that. But I'm curious where certain things like that are going to go, because you can create a documentary, and I'm speaking from like watching two different opposing documentaries. So when a documentary is created, I tend to watch them with a huge grain of salt, because I feel like there is inherently a bias with the editorial sort of liberty that they take with the footage that they capture, because they have to create a story and they have to create drama in order to entertain. It can't just be like a home movie where you're just pointing the camera and you're just watching people live life. There has to be substance. There has to be something tangible to this story. So I feel with her, there's definitely a story that they were able to create and make, and mystery. And I'm curious if this is going to lead to something. For those of you who have seen it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. For those of you who haven't, I encourage you to watch the documentary yourself and sort of base your own opinions on what you see. But also, if there is like a counter documentary, I'd be interested to see what that might be. And the only reason I mention that is because like years ago, my wife and I, we were watching the documentary called Frack Nation. And it just seemed like, wow, fracking is the worst thing ever. And then there was another like opposed fracking video, and it seemed very pro fracking. Like, this isn't that bad. But what I mean by there's always a bias behind it, the one that seemed like fracking was a good thing, it came off as too good. It came off like maybe this film is being subsidized or endorsed by maybe fracking lobbyists. And the other one seemed like extremely anti, in a sense that there is no gray area. It's like, this is just terrible. Don't do it. And I'm not educated myself enough on the topic. It was years ago that I had saw this documentary, so I'm not even, I vaguely remember the sort of the crux of it, but just take what you see with a grain of salt when you're watching some of these things. And then the last one that I want to touch on that I was like heavily into was Narcos Mexico season 2. I had been waiting for this one to come out for a very long time, and it's the cartel in itself, and just, I don't know, the way they romanticize the idea of being a drug dealer, a drug smuggler, in a cartel, like all of these things. Like, it's interesting to see how it originated and where it is now. Now, again, they have to make it entertaining. So a lot of these things are like, they're more glitzy and glamoury, and maybe the people, they might cast someone who's a little bit more attractive than they are in real life. But it was a very interesting story for me. The first season hit me really hard emotionally because, again, being a father, I don't want to give any spoilers for that one, but if you've seen it, you'll know what I'm talking about with the character, or really the real person, Kiki, and just what had happened. And I was sort of like wanting, I don't want to spoil it, but I was wanting to sort of like there to be something in response. And there was with season 2, but it just, the cold reality is that drugs are still being moved across the border. The cold reality is that, like a hydra, you cut one head off, the 2 still remain. It's nothing that's being handled. And what is the best course of action? Is it a war on drugs? Is it legalizing drugs? All drugs, not just marijuana, but, let people be people. If people want to do this to themselves, then who are we to say otherwise? I mean, I don't really know what the right answer is in that regard, but starting with Narcos and the story of Pablo Escobar, and then transitioning into Narcos Mexico, and that one definitely hits closer to home because that is our neighboring border country here in the United States, especially California. And it's just, what is going to happen with this? Where are we going to go with this? It seems like they have boots on the ground, but you have politicians, you have so many hands in the cookie jar. It's an interesting series, and I highly recommend it to anybody who hasn't seen it. So that's what we've been up to. My kids haven't been watching these. By the way, it's only been myself and my wife watching those. Trolls World Tour, the movie Onward. My son wants us to rent Sonic again, and it's like, if you saw my previous podcast, I wasn't even really a fan of that first time around, but we'll see. And so that's kind of where we've been with things. We've been sheltering in place still. I have one more week that I'll be taking off work starting next week. And then as far as I know, it'll be back to business as usual at work. Now, there'll be a few things that they're going to implement and that they're going to change with how we conduct ourselves as employees. But for the most part, I think everybody will be back, at least within the age group that's not at risk. So some of the older staff, like my good pal Marty, I don't think he'll be coming back. So we'll see how this goes, and we'll see what continues to change. I'm still going to remain with the Monday schedules. I don't anticipate releasing more than one video per week. Again, being a part-time student, full-time dad, full-time employee after another week off, and it's just, I like to gather my thoughts and sit down and sort of just, I guess, detox with getting on the podcast and creating something for you guys to listen to, for those of you who continue to support the show, and for my kids to be able to look back on, and even for myself to be able to look back on, what were we doing during this time? What was it like? And how was I dealing as a parent? So anyways, I want to thank you guys for taking the time. And if you are still listening and you are on the YouTube channel, be sure to leave a thumb and a comment in the comment section down below. Even these videos will be released Monday. They're recorded live, and it really is like a one-take thing. I don't have the time to sit down and edit these, at least yet. So I hope to get it right in the first take. And as always, you guys, till next time, see ya.